Welcome to the webinar. The webinar will begin shortly. Welcome to the webinar. The webinar will begin shortly. Welcome to the webinar. The webinar will begin shortly. Welcome to the webinar. The webinar will begin shortly. Welcome to the webinar. The webinar will begin shortly. Welcome to the webinar. The webinar will begin shortly. Welcome to the webinar. The webinar will begin shortly. Hello everyone and welcome to the webinar. My name is Bob Wentz and I shall be the moderator for the webinar. The webinar is entitled Digital Innovation in Wastewater Networks, an Implementation Case Study, UK Water Utility, and it will be presented by Ryan Pearson of Grundfos. There'll be a short time for questions and answers at the end of the presentation, but please note that the presenter's details will be shown during the Q&A session, should you wish to contact them for further information. Please post your questions using the Q&A button in Teams during the course of the webinar. And at the end of the webinar, I'll put up a slide showing details of the sessions that are following this webinar. Thanks very much, everyone. I'd now like to hand over to Ryan.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar that I'm hosting today. As Bob introduced, my name is Ryan Pearson. I'm the business manager for Grundfos Pumps in the UK water utility team. And I'm here today to talk to you around our Grundfos iSolutions Cloud for wastewater networks. I hope you're enjoying the webinars and the content that is being delivered by the Water Equipment Show this year. Certainly I've watched a few presentations, it's been really great. So I'm hoping that I can continue that trend. So I think I'm going to start by just kind of spelling out what this presentation is going to contain and what it's not. So while the presentation is titled Grundfos iSolutions Cloud for Wastewater Networks, and that is a product I'm going to talk a little bit about, the content is aimed more at the process that we've been working to deliver the solution into the water utility that we have been piloting this with, and all of the nuances that we've been finding in that journey, and how we've dealt with the challenges. So it's not going to be very much about the product itself, but more around the processes that we've been working through to deliver the solution on the ground. And so that's the case study. So a little bit about Grundfos to start off with, for those that may not know. Grundfos is the #1 pump manufacturer in the world by volume. We make over 16 million pumps every year. We are global, so over 19,000 employees worldwide, and we have only one owner. That is the Grundfos Holdings Foundation. And that's something that's unique about Grundfos. So we are foundation owned. Our overall objective is not to create shareholder value, because we're not a public organisation. Our objective is to create societal value, and that's heavily linked to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, particularly number 6 and number 13, which are clean water and sanitation for all, and action on climate. To deliver on those sustainable objectives, we are going on a bit of an internal transition. So we are moving from a traditional product orientated organisation into an organisation that is providing value and solutions to the world's problems through digitisation. To do that in Grundfos, we have identified a number of digital building blocks which are there to create the foundation for adding value and creating new value in the future. For water utilities, that means that it is our ambition to create reliable operations, improve TOTEX, so that's reducing OPEX and CAPEX, and also to manage operations in the most long-term and sustainable way. That means that we need to be providing solutions and creating offerings that improve water quality, that increase security of supply, that reduce the impact of our actions on the environment. For example, reducing pollution instances in wastewater. That means increasing operational reliability, reducing our environmental footprint in terms of carbon, and increasing customer satisfaction and making our offerings as a water industry more affordable for all. To do that, we will need to change the way we think about development. Where traditionally we have thought of product development as a pump manufacturer as improving standalone products, that is improving efficiency, for example, in a pump, reducing the power consumption of a pump. And we need to move into a new solution development world where we're considering transformative concepts, bigger ecosystems, more collaboration, more partnerships, creating more flexible solutions which are co-created with end users and societal objectives at the heart of them. We will do that by bringing digital offerings to the market for the full water cycle. And we'll deliver those offerings across 3 layers. Primarily, asset management, that is giving transparency of assets as an offering. The transparency of those assets in a digital space will drive value and improvements in the full water cycle. That will create a larger ecosystem for the future where water supply, water treatment, water recycling is part of a greater ecosystem of efficiency, value, and that is capable of meeting the future demands of society. That will be solutions that provide transparency for both the operators, the owners of the utility, but also transparency right to the consumer. We are all in a place where in our homes we have smart tools, we have smart home hubs, we have smart meters for our electricity, some of us have smart meters for our water, and we're all becoming much more conscientious around our use of energy and resources on the environment. And to enable optimum efficiency in the future, to ensure that we have water resources, water recycling systems that are resilient to the future demands, future ecosystems will become far more complex. We know that this is important to Ofwat, and we know that Ofwat are aware that the answer to lots of these challenges is in data. Ofwat have recognised that high quality data is the foundation for better services for our customers. They recognise that we need to make a step change and start delivering proper innovation through the better use of data. And they know that it will improve overall efficiency by enabling smarter management of networks and more targeted and lower cost interventions. So our regulator knows it, we know it, and the utilities know it. So why isn't it happening? There's a lot of risk around the digital revolution, IoT, Industry 4.0, whatever you want to call it. Cybersecurity is the big one. IT-OT convergence is a big risk. What I mean by IT-OT convergence, that is that we have strategies that enable the value creation opportunity of digital solutions to actually capture that value. A good example of that is an organisation that would run with operate with a run to fail strategy for their equipment. If they continue or insist on pursuing a run to fail strategy of their equipment, then there's no value capture opportunity to knowing proactively when that piece of equipment might fail, because they're not going to make an intervention, which means that while they know it's going to fail, by not making the intervention, they're not actually capturing that value and realizing those savings. There's a lot of unknown unknowns. It's a new world out there, and there's lots of things that people are concerned about. There's known unknowns. There's data reliability. So there's a preconception that how much can I trust the algorithms, the machine learning interfaces, the artificial intelligence. There's control, scope of control. There's supply chain, new suppliers, new partnerships that will be appearing that will create unknowns. There's also challenges, application suitability. Do we have the right hardware in place? Is the hardware cost prohibitive to leveraging the value? There's new legal terms and conditions, new ways of transacting, new ownership of information that need to be addressed. The challenges around leveraging value, quantifying the value. If we've never had the data before, how do we quantify the value of that data? How do we calculate a return on investment? How do we create financial gearing ratios that are aligned to digital service models where we're not investing in assets? There's bureaucracy within organizations, particularly around investment, where the cost of implementing a digital solution may sit with what is traditionally a specific department, but it could be other departments that leverage the value of those offerings. So how do we move those budgets and make those budgets more flexible to be able to operate around that bureaucracy? There's asset standards, data validation, commercially, and the digitally enabled hardware that's available in the field. So these are lots of the problems that are real, they're out there, and I think we all recognise them. I think Ofwat recognise them, and the utilities recognise them. Having said all that, I'm now going to tell you a bit about the specific wastewater network solution that we have been piloting, and how we've addressed some of those challenges and some of those risks to enable the pilot to go live within the UK utility. So Wastewater Network Connect is a tool. It is a data-driven tool that provides analytics for asset management, to create operational savings, to increase operational reliability, and to start a step change into a smart wastewater network. It is not a smart network in itself, but it creates a platform for utilities to step onto that journey with out and out software as a service and data analytics. And I think that's a really key thing here, is that when it's not trying to be the ultimate we do everything kind of smart network. It's a tool that enables you to step on that road and start that journey. So what does it do? It offers 5 modules. Those modules are predictive maintenance. So that allows us to convert data to optimize and improve performance and give early warning of potential things that might happen. So we can preemptively say, 3 months before a pump might fail, that we think it might fail. It gives you overflow warnings. So it monitors the capacity of your network in a specific catchment and tells you where you might see an overflow in 8 hours, 16 hours, 24 hours, depending on some of the data inputs. It monitors actual flow. So it knows the actual flow in your pumping stations at all times without the need for installing a flow meter. And that's really important because we know that installing flow meters can be quite expensive. So we use algorithms and data inputs to calculate the flow at a pump station at any given time. We can monitor infiltration flow. That means that we can separate wastewater, groundwater, and rainwater flows in the sewage network. That's really important when we're looking at catchment management strategies, where we might invest in infrastructure, where we might upgrade sewers, where we might upgrade pump stations, or where we might decide that we actually want to deal with the infiltration. That sort of information also allows us to understand, well, how much waste have we got in our treatment cycle? How much, surface water, groundwater are we putting through our treatment works? And therefore, how much is that costing us? It also gives us pump station capacity utilization. That is that we can optimize the runtime, run hours of the pumps and the pump station to manage capacity or run the pumps at their lowest power consumption or power cost. So there's a lot we can do with what is quite a simple solution. All of these things mean that for the utilities, they can reduce their in-service call-out off hours. So we can know issues before alarm appears, deal with them in a more cost-effective way, optimize the pump stations in terms of energy and pump performance, reduce infiltration to save cost in moving and cleaning rainwater, efficient planning, optimize retention time to avoid things like H2S, capacity overview of pumps and networks for asset management, or indeed for pollution prevention, but ultimately providing actions and insights to move the water with the least amount of effort. One of the key things is flexibility and connection. Cybersecurity was mentioned as a big risk, and the flexibility of our solution was really key to getting this piloted. That is that we offer 3 ways of managing the data transfer. We can do it completely in isolation with a complete Grundfos end-to-end cloud solution, i.e. we take data points from hardware installed on sites and manage that data ourselves and just give transparency to the customer. Alternatively, we can do it with an end-to-end cloud, or we can do it with a cloud-to-cloud, but our feedback is that the market certainly isn't ready for that. But there are hardware cost efficiencies when the market and or if a customer is wanting to transact data in such a way. Certainly the end-to-end Grundfos solution is the most expensive, but it is also the least risky when we look at some of the challenges that we were talking about at the start. So in this particular example, with the Grundfos end-to-end solution, there's a need to install a small amount of hardware on the site to get specific data points, particularly around the power consumption of the pumps, the pressure in the system, and a rainwater sensor to monitor rainwater or rainfall levels at the site. And they're the 4 key inputs we need to get the outputs for each of the modules that were described. But analytics and working on analytics in utilities is not as simple as transacting a solution. What was clear in the process of moving to pilot is that co-creation is very important. And when I say co-creation, that means that the customer, the utility, has a stake in the use of the data to make sure that we unlock the value. And at the start of the process, it can be unclear how that value is captured. And so we need to ensure the following principles are in place. So we have alignment with existing tools and ways of working to ensure we address gaps in value. That's about making sure the right operational stakeholders are engaged, the right asset management team is engaged, and that's to make sure the correct persons are making the interventions that the data recommends at the right time. We make sure that it's simple in structure and functionality to ensure it is easy to use. And that's about having the people with the right application knowledge, both in terms of the wastewater system application knowledge for the systems that are in the transport systems that are in place, but also the data analysts and data engineers to make sure that the data is functional and interpretable. It's simple in the way the data is obtained, and that the data for the specific module for the specific users is displayed. And that we have minimum viable product to reduce complexity. That is, that the data is verifiable very fast, that we can reduce the go-to-market time. We also found that because often the transparency as a service that we're offering is something that's not available to the utilities today, that quantifying the value of the solution and therefore understanding the commercial proposition can be quite difficult. To manage that, we have had to, what I would call, invert the traditional transactional relationship we have with our customers. We need to stop thinking about our offerings as a product and as a transaction. It's not simply a I want X, it costs Y, you give me Z anymore. It's far more nuanced than that. And because we won't understand what that is until we understand what the data transparency gives the user across their business. And therefore, we have to have a commercial model that allows us to manage those unknowns and allows us to understand those unknowns before the complete commercial offering is done. So implement at a much earlier phase. And that allows both the provider, Grundfos in this case, and the user, the utilities, to understand the true value and impact from the offering before we finalize the solution. And that's quite may sound very simple, but in practice is quite a difficult thing for people to comprehend when they're very, very used to a linear transaction model. To enable that, a thorough understanding of all the challenges facing the business for a particular asset base is really important. And that means a much broader scope of stakeholders involved. This is not a one-to-one transaction. It's not, it's a, you know, there's 10 people involved on either side from all areas of the business to understand all the challenges and where the value can be leveraged from the new transparency. And there's a non-exhaustive list of the types of challenges that we're looking to solve by giving more transparency of operations. So we know that Ofwat want data innovation, and they want it to use the data to get better insight to offer better or new services to ultimately the customers of the utility, the consumers, that's you or I. To deliver that, the data gives us potential to move for a number of different commercial offerings which can create value. We're currently talking about operating in this space, which is transparency as a service, That's where we give you data, we give you analytics, we give you AI and machine learning to create value yourself. Now, the utilities, the key thing is here, the transparency as a service gives you the value creation opportunity, but to capture the value that is beholden to the utility at this point in time.
Sorry to interrupt you, Ryan. Sorry to interrupt you. You're into your Q&A session period of time now.
My apologies. I will wrap up quickly. So to enable us to use that data, we can look at different commercial offerings where the value is captured in different ways. That's really what that's trying to say. But ultimately, we want to drive product and service innovation through the improvement of existing or the creation of new services, new business models, and new commercial offerings. So summary notes, we have managed to clear barriers for initial implementation. We've done that. We've identified the need. We've addressed the legals. We've gone through application feasibility, etc. And we have a commercial model based on actual value created that will be assessed after the initial phase. And we have a future state ecosystem incorporating real-time control and AI as a possibility, which will be enabled by the transparency as a service. So we've got on that first step, which is the transparency, and the future is limitless, but is now possible. So thank you very much. Any questions?
Yeah, thanks very much indeed, Ryan. Do have a question for you. Can you explain in more detail with regards to how Grundfos perform infiltration diagnostics?
Probably not in 4 minutes, but we use the flow monitoring, the rainfall data, so we know the expected incoming sewage from the catchment. We know how much rainfall there is, and by separating those things, we can ascertain what groundwater levels are. There is the possibility to add, at more cost, a groundwater sensor, but to get that number more accurate, but we haven't seen a need for that specifically yet.
Okay, thanks very much indeed, Ryan. Another one for you here. How have you dealt with the security risks and challenges with your platform?
Okay, so obviously security is a big question at the moment. Lots of people talking about it. We've dealt with that in Grundfos by building our platforms on Microsoft Azure. So we're using the same security layers as you would have with Microsoft Teams, for example, because it's all built on the Azure platform and on the Azure servers. So we don't actually host any of the data ourselves. That's all outsourced to Microsoft.
Thanks, Ryan. Could you also please put up your contact slide, the last slide there?
Sorry. Yes.
Yep, thanks very much indeed.
There you are.
Okay, we'll just leave that slide up there for a moment. Very quickly, Ryan, I've got one more for you, if you could deal with it very quickly. What type of outcomes would you expect to achieve?
I think what we expect to get from the pilot is we expect to get 0 reactive failures. We expect to know exactly when a pump is going to fail a significant period of time before it fails, to allow the utility to make an intervention. We expect to almost eliminate the risk of pollution and to give an early warning of when that could be about to happen. And we expect to be able to optimize the pumps and reduce their energy consumption across the entire catchment by running in a more optimized way as the network capacity demands.
Okay, fine. Thanks very much indeed. Okay, let me just go to this slide and thanks. Right, okay. I'd like to thank you, Ryan, very much indeed for your presentation this morning, and thank you all for attending. And if any of you do have any questions that you were not able to have answered this morning, please do get in touch with Ryan. I know he'd be very happy to hear from you and answer any questions that you might have. On the next slide, I'm going to show the following webinars that come after this session. So if you'd like to see details of them and attend them, I'll put them up in just a moment. But all it remains for me now to do is to thank you again, Ryan, for the presentation, and thank you all for attending. Thanks, everyone, and goodbye for now.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.